Welcome to Moments with Mary Ann. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Matt Geiger, and he's here today to share with us his new book, Astonishing Tales. Your astonishment may vary. Now, Matt's debut book, The Geiger Counter, Raised by Wolves and Other Stories, was published in 2016, and it won first prize in the Midwest Book Awards and was named as a finalist in the Next Generation Indie Book Awards and the American Book Fest. He's won a number of journalism awards and lives in Wisconsin with his wife and daughter, 10 animals, and several metaphysical questions. So let's welcome to the show, Matt Geiger.
Thank you so much for having me on.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. And my goodness, so your book, Astonishing Tales, I mean, you must be pretty excited about this getting published. Like, people are loving it.
Well, I hope they are. I enjoyed parts of writing it. And I think what I hope, a few people have said nice things about it, and what I really hope is that they don't just like the stories in here, but that the stories in here make them like more things out in the greater world at large, which is kind of the general theme of what's in this book is being more astonished and laughing more and seeing more beautiful, strange, bizarre things in the world around us.
Well, and so why don't you share with our listeners, so what was some of the main inspiration behind writing this book?
Yeah, so there's a very specific, if you look at the table of contents, it seems like such a random assortment of topics, right? It's about parenting and Neanderthal DNA and boxers and circus performers and two-headed calves and Easter eggs and things. But it is really all about one thing, and that's, I came across this, I was reading a story by Borges, and he talks about these metaphysicians, these philosophers, and he says they don't seek truth. What they seek is amazement. And I have a background in philosophy and humor. Those are kind of my two things. And I was thinking about the fact that, of course, that's what we're seeking. We're seeking awe and astonishment and things like that. And so I set out over the course of 2 years to find things that were astonishing. And some of them are very small. I mean, some of them came to me without me having to leave my house. Small moments in domestic life with your child and stuff like that. And some of them are actually quite strange by any measure, but they're all bound together by the fact that they shake up our habitual perception of the world and make us really see the things around us, which are quite funny and quite beautiful, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, it really does offer. I mean, you've got so many different stories in here. It's very, you're right. It's like this eclectic combination, but they all do have that common thread.
Yeah. One of the things, there's actually a story that's kind of the reveal later in the book, but one of the stories is about a Russian word. There's no English word for it, but the word is astronomy. And it has to do with that, what I mentioned earlier, that kind of disrupting our habitual perception of the world and seeing what we thought were ordinary things in the truth of their strangeness, so to speak. And there's an author I like, Knausgaard, the Norwegian, who talks about how if you go on vacation for a week or two and you come back to your house, there's a faint shimmer of strangeness, he says, around everything. Things you just take for granted and don't see in your daily life. And that's in all of these, whether it is a circus performer or just, my 3-year-old daughter making Easter eggs.
Mm-hmm. What is, and so on that, kind of that shimmer of things that seem a little different or, not quite the same, what is a story that you'd like to share with our listeners that kind of relates to that?
Well, I have it depends on the day. I mean, there are a couple that are kind of my go-to stories. One is the one from which the book title comes, which is Astonishing, and it's about there's this two-headed calf that was alive for a moment and then died after it was born, and then they stuffed and mounted her heads and they put her up in this gas station in rural Wisconsin. And I came across her there, and I was amazed at how few people who went into the gas station noticed this strange thing right over their heads. And that's kind of one of my go-tos, but what I'm kind of feeling right now is called Everyday Easter Eggs, which was actually the working title of the book. And that's about this day, and this is once again one of these things that seems totally normal, on the surface at least. My 3-year-old daughter wanted to make Easter eggs, and it wasn't Easter. And I said no, because I'm an adult, and adults are, idiots a lot of the time. I think I say in the story, I said it with the well-worn confidence of an imbecile. Because I thought, well, it's not Easter, we can't do it. And then I had that moment where I realized that she was right, and you can make Easter eggs anytime you want if you have eggs and an hour, and I think that's kind of my favorite right now.
I think that's a great story. Well, and it's interesting because you even talk about wisdom from an 83-year-old pinup legend, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, Bonnie Logan is one of her names. She's had many names over the years. That's a great example of what the book is about. I'm from New England originally, but I live in Wisconsin now in the Midwest, and I was somewhere once, and in a little tiny town, and this quote unquote little old lady was nearby. She was crossing the street, I think, outside, and someone said, "You should ask her about her life." And I did, and today she's 84 now, I think, and she uses a walker to get around, and she's the type of person who, when she goes to the grocery store, people don't even see her. She's just invisible, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of marginalize her as just, quote, a little old lady, like I said before. So I asked her about her life, and we went and had breakfast together. And she brought with her these reused plastic shopping bags. And so I go to this cafe, and we get pancakes and black coffee, and we're sitting there, and this woman, she takes out these scrapbooks, and she plops them down on the table, and they're incredibly heavy, right? And I'm thinking, what is this? What am I about to see here? And she starts flipping through them with me, and it is page after page after page after page of these covers of old glossy magazines that she was in, or center spreads and all these things. And if you want to have a really surreal, bizarre morning, just sit down with an elderly woman and have her show you all these, topless photos of her from the 1950s and 60s. But she walked me through them. Obviously there's the shock factor of just seeing them. I mean, the visual imagery is really something. But she walked me through them, and it was her life. It was her life story. And she's one of these people who happens to have someone was photographing as she went along. But she told me her life story, and it was fascinating, and it was amazing. And the things she went through were terrible. I mean, she was this farm girl who decided to go and be a star, and she did. But of course, she had to deal with all sorts of the terrible, catastrophes that encounter so many people. And yet she lived this good, beautiful, adventurous, exciting life. And I thought she would be a great cover model for the book because of that, because that's very much what the book is about, is laughing and seeing funny things and beautiful things in an imperfect world. And so, yeah, she's on the cover of the book, and she was at the book launch party with me and everything, and she's a good friend. She's wonderful.
How does she feel about the book?
She likes it. She's in the Burlesque Hall of Fame, and she goes to their annual celebration that they have in Las Vegas every year, and she's very excited. It's in June, I think, and she's going to bring a bunch of books with her because she's very excited about it. She thought it was very funny, and there's my favorite passage in this entire book. A lot of this is supposed to be funny, but there's a part in it that's not too funny, but that I really like at the end of that story about her, and it's about the fact that I have this picture of her that Bonnie gave to my daughter when my daughter was born. She said, "Here, give this to your daughter." And it's a picture of her in a dress, this black and white kind of publicity photo from years ago. And I gave it to my daughter, and it's in this little drawer of childhood mementos and gifts that people gave her, and it's there to serve as a reminder, because someday my daughter, she's about to turn 5, but someday she'll be an angst-filled teenager, and she'll ask me, if everything is fleeting and everything comes to an end, and I'll say yes, and then she'll ask, if everything ends someday, does any of it really matter? And I can answer, I can show her that picture and explain to her what a life can be like, and say yes, even though everything ends and everything is fleeting, everything matters.
Oh, I think that's a beautiful message for everybody, and it's interesting when we look at just our lives in general and the things that we come across, how much of it is really astonishing, and you're really kind of telling the readers or listeners to really take notice throughout their day.
And it's up to us to see the world around us, right? And it's so funny. Humor and beauty they're so hard to come by, it feels like, at least. But if you watch a really scary movie, you won't just be scared when the monster jumps out an hour into the movie. You'll be scared for a month. You know what I mean? That'll stay with you, that capacity for fear. The next time you have to go into the basement to get something, you're terrified. And the point of this book is you can do that with humor and beauty too. And the point of these stories isn't just to make someone chuckle on page 43. The point is to maybe chuckle more the next time they're playing with their kid or something as well. And I do think we have an obligation. We live in a world that's obviously broken in a variety of ways. I don't think that's news to anyone. But there's this bumper sticker that I see everywhere that says, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And while I agree with the underlying sentiment of that, I think it's actually the reverse that's true. I don't think you even have to pay attention to be outraged. I think Twitter or whatever will bring it to your doorstep. You don't even have to. Outrage is easy. What you have to pay attention to see are the funny things and the astonishing things and the beautiful things.
Yeah, there's so much out there. Well, and so when you were developing this book and collecting these stories, were there stories that were just, because there's only so much room in a book, were there stories that you had to leave out? Anything that really captured your interest that might be for book number 2?
I like to think that's funny. That's a good question, because anytime you cut something from your book, this is my second book, and you always think like, well, maybe it's just not a good fit for this. Maybe I can use it in some other way. But the fact of the matter is, if it's getting cut from your manuscript, it's probably not that good at all under any circumstances. So I actually deleted most of the stuff. This book is about half of what it originally was, and there were plenty of things that. One of my editors would just, he'd just write next to a story, this isn't funny, which there's no coming back from that, right? I mean, if it's not funny, it's not funny. But what was really cut was a lot of the things, the fluff in the stories that made it into the book, because some of these are a page or two, and some of my favorite stories are a page or two. And the reason for that is because I love Russian literature, right? Which sounds odd for someone who writes ostensibly funny stories. But I have 3 favorites, and it's Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, who write these, enormous 1,000-page books that are so wonderful and full of insights into human nature. And then Chekhov, who writes all these incredible stories about human nature, many of which are 2 pages long. And I've always been fascinated by the fact that Chekhov could write funny, gut-wrenching stories that were so short. And so I like short. I'm a journalist too. I write for newspapers and magazines, and I like short gut punches. There's a story in this book about a boxer, for instance, and I like stories that are kind of a short left hook, just a punch of meaning without a lot of fluff around them.
Kind of just giving that kind of just hitting that punchline so people are kind of staying with it.
Yeah, and I do like people always tell me I pour so much into these stories, right? And then I have a degree in philosophy, and I think about what I think are these kind of grand ideas and put them in here. And then I cannot tell you how many people have contacted me and said, "Oh yeah, we keep your book in the bathroom, and it's just delightful. It's a great book to have in there." And it's this wonderful compliment. And I always think like, "Oh right, when they're done, these are silly little stories that you can read in 4 minutes or something."
Yeah, and have those. Well, and when people are reading your book, what are some of the things that you want the readers to take away? I know we've covered some things, and I don't want to go too deeply into many of the stories because we do want people to pick up their own copy of Astonishing Tales. We don't want to be the spoiler here. you know? So, what are some things that you kind of feel that readers are taking away from your book?
Yeah, I really do hope, and I'm not particularly bright or anything, but I do think I've hit upon something in my travels and my reading and my writing about this idea of the capacity for happiness and humor and insight, and I think that it's something you have to be receptive to. Because unexperienced, unseen beauty or unacknowledged love or compassion are wasted. And I mentioned Knausgaard earlier, the author who I like so much, and he has this line in one of his books where he's talking about depression, and his wife is suffering from terrible depression, and he's talking about how hard it is to reach her, and he has this line where he says, the beauty of the world means nothing if you stand alone in it. And I'm not as good a writer as he, certainly. But as a humorist, I think the humor of the world means nothing if you stand alone in it. I think sharing humor is important, beyond just, kind of tickling your proverbial funny bone for a minute. I think it's important to laugh, and that doesn't mean the world is fixed or everything is okay, and it doesn't mean you're okay with everything not being okay. But while we're busy trying to fix the world, I think it's okay to stop and be amazed and laugh and see all the beauty in it. And I really hope, especially as a parent, when I talk to my daughter, if I tell her she's going to turn 5 soon, if I tell her the world will be fixed by the time she's grown up, I'll be lying to her, because that's not going to happen. I hope the world is kind of trending toward being fixed, but what I really want is for her to have the capacity to lead a good and meaningful and fulfilling, examined life, as Socrates and Plato would say, even in a broken world. And I hope readers get that too.
Well, that's so important. I mean, we have a society that's kind of in this. It's kind of this state of loneliness. I think they're talking about it's more people feel lonely now than any other time in history, and it's interesting. To be able to have these kind of road, these signs in the road saying, hey, focus on happiness, focus on what's around you. I think that's a big deal.
It's strange to me how that has been, I don't know, that people at this point, for some reason, and the way society sees things swings and moves, but being happy is almost, if you're happy in any way, or if you think things are beautiful or funny in any way, people almost just assume you are an idiot or something. And I think that's not the case. I think, and they also, maybe they think you're apathetic too, or blind to all of the suffering and terrible things. But once again, paradoxes are real, and things can be beautiful and tragic, or funny and tragic at the same time. And once we realize that, we do start to feel less lonely. And once we realize how weird the world is, and how much strange stuff is all around us, how much shimmering strangeness is all around us, and once we share that with other people, I think we do feel less lonely, and they feel less lonely too, because we're a narrative species. That's our adaptation. That's how we thrive. That's how we get through the day, is with our stories. Cheetahs do it with speed. Giraffes do it with long necks. We do it with stories. That's what we do as a species, to not feel lonely.
Mm-hmm. Have that connection. Well, it's interesting. I have a friend who's a producer, and he would always say, just the different experiences that people have. He's like, you can't make this up. Sometimes, real life is just offers so much humor, that the imagination can't even get you there.
One of my favorite stories in this book is, it's one of the shortest, and it's nothing. It's just a throwaway story, but it's about, my daughter likes to empty all the shampoo and conditioner in the tub when she takes a bath or a shower. And if you ever want to, as an adult, as a 39-year-old adult, feel like you're not equipped to deal with the real world, go to take a shower in the morning and step on like an inch-thick layer of conditioner and fall in the tub, and then have trouble getting up because everything is coated in this viscous liquid. And that is literally how I've started my day a couple times because she keeps doing it. And, obviously it works as metaphor as well. But, you think, oh my gosh, there's no way that I can pay the car insurance and get the kid to kindergarten and pay the bills when I can't, even get up. And then you somehow get up, and then you laugh about it, and then you go out into the world, and for the most part, you're okay.
She definitely keeps you on your toes.
They do, and they help us see the world around us, right? Because kids, who is a better guide to help you see the strange humor in the world than a little kid, right?
Yeah, being able to see things with such great wonder, which, it has me kind of thinking, you're this dad, okay? So how has having a daughter changed your writing?
Well, I think it's made it better. I don't want to make the claim that it's made it good, but it certainly made it better because I write in the book that there are really only two special times when we see things. There's the first time and the last time. And that's when you really see something, right? If you're the first time you see it, you're too young to appreciate how special it is. The first time you see all the wondrous things around you. And then sometimes if we're really lucky or maybe unlucky, right before we die, we have a last time we see a loved one's face or, anything. And those are the times you really see things. You hear it time and time again. Oh, I never really saw that except for those two times. And what little kids do is they teach us to see things as if for the first time, but before it's the last. And that's what humor is. You can't laugh at things unless you really see them for what they are. And kids really see everything for what it is because they can't cheat because they don't know. They have no frame of reference for anything. And that's why they ask such beautiful, ridiculous questions. And if you're a writer, what better thing could there be than a little, it's like having, the first great comic novel ever written is Don Quixote. And the whole joke of that book is that his frame of reference is way off, and he doesn't have a clue what he's looking at, and he thinks, windmills are giants, et cetera, et cetera. And you have that in real life when you have a little kid tagging along behind you. And I think it's helped my writing because it's helped me once again see all the beautiful, crazy, weird things around us.
So you got to tell me, is there a book two? Because I know people are wanting to know this.
Well, I'm working on it. I have a few. I'm 3 stories into the next book, and my books tend to be about 40 stories, so it'll be a while, but I am working on it, yes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we can't wait to, this book is such a great book. It's written so well, so I really, applaud you and congratulate you for writing it. I know our listeners are delighted to pick up a copy of Astonishing Tales, and, of course, it's such a great gift for friends. I've personally have picked up a couple copies for friends of mine that I think would just love it. Where can people connect with you, Matt, and be part of your community?
Yeah. The easiest place is to just go to geigerbooks.com because that's my website, and they can link up with me. You can contact me directly or link up with me on social media there. And of course, there are links to books and things like that. And you can also see when I have new stories that pop up in literary journals or things like that. You can find them there as well because I try to keep it updated.
Well, I know you're very active on social media. I'm following you. I suggest our listeners do as well. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you, Matt. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, Astonishing Tales, Your Astonishment May Vary. Again, you can connect with Matt at geigerbooks.com, and we'll have the link below. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.